During this course, we have learned a lot about professional learning committees. A professional learning committee is an ongoing process in which educators work collaboratively in recurring cycles of collective inquiry and action research to achieve better results for the students they serve. Professional learning committees operate under the assumption that the key to improve learning for students is continuous job-embedded learning for educators. In our district, PLCs are called achievement teams. At our school, we are not 100% of achievement teams. Not all departments have it. Our foreign language department is one of those. Our foreign language teachers have been reluctant to the idea of conforming an achievement team for the different levels of the languages. There are three big ideas that drive PLCs. We have to ensure that all students learn. In order to do this, we have to ask ourselves four questions. What is it we want our students to know? How will we know if our students are learning? How will we respond when students do not learn? How will we enrich and extend the learning for students who are proficient? The second big idea is having a culture of collaboration. Form a team where members work interdependently to achieve common goals for which they are mutually accountable. Have a regular time for collaboration. Members are clear on the purpose and priorities of their collaboration. Stay focused and on task. The principal provide teachers with resources, trainings, and ongoing support. The last big idea is to focus on results. Know if students are learning and respond appropriately to their needs. During this big idea, it is important to achieve SMART goals, to gather and analyze evidence of student learning. Evidence of student learning is being used on a regular basis to identify the specific needs of individual students. The primary reason to become a PLC is to impact and improve our teaching. Step number one in leading a PLC was to form a team. I had to be careful who I invited to be part of it because we have teachers in our department that do not like to have common lessons, grading, assignments, and projects. For my team, I chose 3 other Spanish teachers. Jennifer, who has been with our school over 30 years, she teaches Accelerated Spanish 2. Ed, who is our department chair and has been teaching for over 15 years, and Juan, who teaches native speakers Spanish 2. Step 2 was to establish norms as a team. It is important to establish these norms to help determine whether the group will function as a high-performing team or become simply a loose collection of people working together. We wanted to make sure we were strong enough to continue working as a professional learning committee. We decided that our norms were to have an open communication and collaboration, pretty much be open-minded at all times, commit to dates and times that work well with everybody. So set up a calendar, have established goals, so have a plan, share lessons that have worked well in the class, therefore share best practices, debrief at the end of the lesson or unit. We want to know what went well and what needs improvement. That way we can change for the following chapter or unit. Our focus for Chapter 4A was to increase student engagement and motivation by changing the lessons for our last chapter of this school year. We've noticed a lot of students have lost this motivation and engagement, and their grades are slowly decreasing, and we want to make sure they end this year strong. As a team, we focus on creating new activities, a new quiz, and a final project instead of a test for this chapter. Our SMART goals were: by the end of the first week, 90% of the students will be able to identify the Cuando era niño vocabulary. By the beginning of the third week, 90% of the students will be able to use the imperfect tense to talk about childhood. And by the end of the third week, 98% of the students will use the vocabulary Cuando era niño in context and will be able to use the imperfect tense correctly. Our outcome of our PLC were common lessons, common assessments, and common projects. For the common lessons, instead of using the textbook, we actually used online resources and other hands-on activities that would have students engaged and motivated to complete them. Instead of having them copy the imperfect tense notes, we actually used Pear Deck to make it more interactive for them. This was our first time using it. Jennifer was the only one that had used it in the past. Therefore, she actually modeled one of her lessons on the imperfect tense during one of our PLC meetings. Our common assessment, instead of having a chapter test, we actually created a common project. The only common assessment for this chapter was actually a quiz that we created using Socrative. So it was an online quiz instead of having them take the test or the quiz on paper. These past few weeks, we noticed different things. One, we noticed that it was really easy to work together and come up with positive ideas, share our lessons, model our lessons, and discuss any assessments. PLCs are more than just common grading categories. We were excited to share lessons and not have to come up with our own ideas. We shared lessons that we've used in the past and they've worked. In the classroom, we noticed an increase in student engagement with the new lesson plans. We noticed an increase in quiz scores, which we'll see in the following slide. We noticed 100% student participation on a project and we had no failing grades. Therefore, it increased our percentage. For this project, we also used it as a test instead of giving them a chapter test. And you will see that also in the continuing slides. As I mentioned, making this change from a paper quiz to a Socrative quiz, we have an increase in students' grades. I have 4 periods of Spanish 2. Ed only has 1 period. If you can see, my second, third, fourth, and sixth period all improved. Sixth period improved more than my second period. The highest improvement was sixth period by 14%. Fourth period increased by 4%. 3 period by 2%, and second period only 1%. Regis's class also had an increase from a 72% in Chapter 3B quiz to an 86.5%. So this quiz format was very beneficial for the students. Like I previously mentioned, we also decided to create a project instead of giving them a chapter test. As you can see with this chart, all of our classes had an increase also. My classes were in the 80% and they went up to a high 80s to a low 90%, and Mr. Regis's class had about an 84% to a 92%. So it was very beneficial to change this also. Overall, creating this PLC and having common assessments, common projects, common lessons worked out for the best for us, and we are going to continue doing this next year.